and welcome once again to Ponds Python Practice. Today I'm going to be talking about timers, and specifically one aspect of simple GUI timers that you will need to use in your stopwatch program. Timers are really made up of four different parts. There's the call to create the timer handler, which is both specified and written out as a function, or rather the handler function is written out and then registered. And also the timer.start function, which is always used if you're going to use your timer at all, and the timer.stop function, which is used most of the time because when you close the frame, the timer doesn't automatically stop. So this program simply tracks the number of times that the timer has been called and draws that on the canvas, and it also keeps track of how many times the timer has been stopped. So it's a simple GUI program, so let's look at the bottom. We create a frame, and then we create a timer, and note that I have to specify the name of the timer and that the timer is a simple GUI function, not a function of the frame. So it's called every 100 milliseconds, which is a tenth of a second, and its timer handler is tick. What does tick do? Well, it just increments this variable count. There's also two buttons, start timer and stop timer, and a draw handler. The draw handler just tells us the information stored in the count variable. And the buttons, okay, the start button's easy, it just starts the timer. And the stop button's also kind of easy. It increments the number of times that the timer's been stopped, and it tells us that number, and then it stops the timer. Okay, so let's see if this works. Okay, good so far. Nothing's happening because I haven't created any events. Let's start the timer. Okay, the timer's running and it's incrementing. Good, good. Well, let's stop the timer. Okay, good. The timer stopped, and it tells me that the timer has stopped one time. Okay, that looks nice. Now, the thing is, though, I only want this message to be printed once for each time that the timer has been stopped, right? Because that makes sense. So let's see what happens when we click Stop Timer again. We want nothing to happen, but it keeps incrementing the timer. Why is that? Well, that's because the stuff in the button handler is called every time the button is pressed. So every time the button is pressed, stop number is increased by 1, and we print out the message, and we call timer.stop. And timer.stop does not throw an error if the timer is not currently running. So we need to check if the timer is running before we do any of this stuff. I wonder if there's a function that will do that for us. Let's check the docs. Okay, so it's a simple GUI thing, so it should be under graphics. And there we go, timers. And create timer, no. Timer.is running. This looks promising. Okay, this can be a little bit hard to read, but the important thing here is that it returns whether the timer is running, that is, it's been started but not stopped. What they really mean is it returns true if the timer is running. And you can see that in the examples here. So let's try to implement that into our program. So we can say if timer.is running, and it's a function, don't forget the colon on an if, and we should indent these because they're supposed to be part of this if. So what does this do now? Okay, so when stop is pressed, it checks if the timer is running. And I could say equal true, but that's the same effect because timer.is running only returns true or false. So if the timer is running, the stop number is increased, and the message is printed. And then, regardless of this, the timer is stopped. Let's see if our program works now. Okay, so we start the timer, and it runs, and then we stop the timer, it prints the message, and then we click the button again, and nothing happens. That's awesome. Okay, so that's how we get this to work. So remember this timer.isRunning function when you're writing your stopwatch program. Now let's go over some common errors that are made when writing programs with timers. Okay, so the first error is forgetting to assign a name to your timer, just saying simple GUID.create timer. This will cause an error when we first try to call anything with the timer. So that's kind of subtle because the timer isn't going at first, but when we stop the program, we see name error, timer is not defined. Well, it isn't because we did not create a name to go with the timer. Works now. You can also forget that the timer is in milliseconds and see, okay, I want it to run every second. And that's going crazy fast, like you can see there. So, or you could also forget that milli means 1,000 and think that 100 means it's once every second, and you can be surprised when it starts increasing so fast. A subtle error is forgetting to stop the frame. This won't actually keep the timer handlers from running, but it will keep the draw handler from running. So nothing's happening on the draw handler, and I start the timer, and well, nothing happens, but we can stop the timer and we know that it works. Or I could say print high. I could print high, and it works. So that's an error to look out for just in general. Another timer error is forgetting to start the timer, and this right here is going to cause another error. Try to guess what it is. It's a syntax error, bad input, def. That's because we've defined this function up here, but it no longer has any body. So it's looking for a body. So we can either pass something so that Python doesn't flip out, or we can print started. So we can run the program, and I say the timer started, but well, it isn't because it's not running. And when I stop the timer, nothing works. Similarly, you can also forget to stop the timer, and this one is much more subtle. Okay, so we're going to start the timer, and it started and it's running, and we're going to stop the timer and wait. I've hit the stop button, and it tells me I'm keeping hitting the stop button, but the timer keeps running. And okay, so let's stop the, oh wait, that's right. Closing the frame does not start the timer, so we need to reset the thing. So just remember that if you want to stop the timer, you need to actually call timer.stop. In summary, timers are pretty easy. You just need to be careful of a few common errors. Make sure that you have your timer increment correct, and that you actually have and register a timer function, timer handler rather, and that you remember to start and stop your timer as needed. And also, if you have something that depends on whether the timer is running or not, remember to check if timer.isRunning. Thank you for watching. Good luck with your stopwatch project, and I will see you next time.